today we're talking about March 2nd, where we moved from Westport on the west coast to Hanmer Springs, which is a thermal hot pool and is partway through the Lewis Pass, which is the pass from east to west on the South Island, but on the upper part of the island. So we're going to start with just a picture of something from the Freedom Camping, which was a chicken that got on the hood. Appears there were some wild chickens out at the Freedom Park, Camp Park area, and one of the chickens got on our hood and started pecking the windshield. But when we put up the curtain, it went away. So anyway, we have a chicken picture.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you took those pictures. Those were great.
Did.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So.
And before we left Westport, we drove to this area that had a seal colony year round, and we saw some seals. Most were small. It maybe is just a small breed of seal, smaller breed. But we did see seals. That was fun. And the walk was really lovely, up some bluffs. And then we went a little farther towards Cape Foul Wind. And we had to do that just because of the name. But Cape Foul Wind was called that by, I think, Captain Cook, who ended up having difficulty getting around this spit of land because of the wind. So he called it Foul Wind, Cape Foul Wind.
And it didn't have anything to do with flatulence.
Oh, right. So, did you want to say a little bit about the trail?
Just that it was a trail that walked along the top of the cliffs, and we had nice views both to the north and to the south. We ended up crossing some private lands,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was fenced with number 8 wire, and they had little steps that you could go up and step over the wire,
Mm-hmm.
and then step back down. So
Mm-hmm.
it was very comfortable for traipsing like we were. I imagine that they'll have the same thing when we go to Wales in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
We also saw lots of plants that had been planted there over the previous years by biology classes. And most of these are flax, which is what they call this bush. It's kind of like a pandanus that they use to make fiber from. And also what are called Dr. Seuss trees or cabbage trees, just because of how they'll have these little tufts of fronds out on the ends of their branches. And so they look like something Dr. Seuss would have drawn. Then we drove, when we left Cape Foul Wind, we proceeded inland and drove up over the Lewis Pass.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a lot of that driving, and you did a lot of the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell us what you saw?
Well, the pictures are of high rolling hills and braided rivers, and most of it a little bit dry. And in fact, some of the most lovely scenery was as we were coming into Hanmer Springs with big valleys and high cliffs. So it's really lovely scenery. The Lewis Pass there are a couple passes. We went to the Haas Pass before when we went over to the west coast, but there's also Arthur's Pass, and that's where with the scenery with the high snow-capped mountains. But Lewis Pass was a beautiful pass. The scenery was really, really gorgeous. So their pictures, we'll have some pictures of the scenery. And we stopped, I think, just after we got over the summit of Lewis Pass. There was a little place to stop, so we got out and walked and did just a very short trail to a pond, and it was very pretty. I think we have a picture of that as well.
Yeah.
And then on to Hanmer Springs.
Hanmer Springs takes advantage of this geothermal activity in the area. And so these are thermal hot springs associated with a spa, and the city council, I guess, owns this.
Yeah.
And they've developed a set of really lovely pools, some of which are high in sulfur and some are not, and they're at different temperatures, and some have cascades, and there's also a water park associated with it that we didn't go to,
Right.
just because there were a lot of kids and we were there for relaxation rather than screaming.
They were having a good time.
Right. But the pools were very well maintained, very clean, and there were both freshwater and mineral springs. We ended up taking a couple pictures, actually, of us in one of the freshwater springs with this water coming out of a nozzle and spraying over our heads.
It was pleasant.
It was kind of a form of brainwashing.
Could be.
After that, we went to dinner at a place called the Vintage Bistro, and the meal was...
It was okay.
Okay. We had sandflies biting us during the meal. That was a little disconcerting. And then we went back to the camp. It was one of the Big 10 holiday parks, or top 10 holiday parks, and it was lovely. And we could see the sunset over the surrounding mountains. And that was March 2nd. Oh, did you want to say something else?
I was going to say something about the sandflies, just to say that here in much of New Zealand, people don't even use screens. They just leave the doors open, except in the areas where there are sandflies. And they tell us that citronella oil works for sandflies. We'll find that out in the next day or two as we hike through areas with sandflies. But no mosquitoes where we were. Just amazing the few insects that there are. So,
Sure.
great.
That's
Okay,
it?
that's it.
Okay. Ta-ta. Love you.
Love. Bye.